The way we have structured it tonight with the DCNA is we're going to have the DCNA presidents lead off each with one question that we have culled from the comments of our respective residents in our respective neighborhoods. And these are kind of broader questions just to get the conversation started. We're going to ask that the audience hold your questions until the end of the first 6 that the DCNA asks. But in the meantime, I have some pencils and paper that we can pass around so that if you need to write something down and remember it, you certainly can. That way, if you think of a good point or a good question or something, a follow-up, you certainly can. Obviously, there's a lot of people here. A lot of people have questions. We're not necessarily going to be able to get to everybody. But if you have one, we will certainly create a mechanism after the fact in order to allow you to ask that question and get an answer offline. But we'll try to get to as many questions as we can tonight, so we're going to keep it moving. We just also ask that during the DCNA questions you wait, and also that when you do get to the point of asking questions, you just do so in a polite and respectful manner. I think we're all adults here, and everyone will do just fine with that. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce the first question. It will be Diane Case from Historic Paulus Hook Association to ask a question about development.
I got it. Everybody knows I can talk loud. Okay, including Steve. All right. They give the old timers the tough ones here in development questions. So, Jersey City has over 150 redevelopment plans, each of which effectively award property owners and developers a free pass around the usual zoning rules in the area. The downtown Jersey City has the highest property values in the state, yet the city is still rolling out plans to designate even more downtown parcels as, quote-unquote, in need of development or redevelopment. Development is moving out at a rapid pace, and many units are coming online, yet despite increased supply, the cost of housing continues to rise precipitously. The Affordable Housing Trust does not seem to have made a dent in this trend. Residents would like to favor a more holistic strategy to development over continued piecemeal use of the redevelopment plans and variances. And we want one with a greater focus on affordable housing and a stronger role for citizens in the process to ensure transparency. An updated master plan with affordable housing built in and a citizens advisory board are 2 examples of potential concrete actions that the city could take, and we've discussed these at the DCNA level. So our question to the mayor tonight is, what steps can you agree to that would curtail the overuse of the redevelopment plans, both downtown and, redevelopment plans and variances downtown, and use what we've learned down here in the rest of the city? And I think we also have to look at goals, tangible goals, development goals for the city, both short-term and long-term, which hopefully will include a master plan. And we want the community to be a part of it, and we want the community to be a very real part of development, which at this point it really takes someone on a full-time basis to keep track of everything that's going on, and we've got all the neighborhoods doing that, and add the affordable housing component into it. So how can we manage to put all of those things together and make it happen?
That is a long question. Okay, so let me try and give a little bit of a picture on some of the things that are happening throughout the city outside of here. And then some of the things that we focused on that will certainly stretch beyond 4 years granted for any mayor, and that I think will have a lasting impact in some of those things that were mentioned. So let's start with kind of development overall and outside of downtown. You know, all the time that I have conversations with people outside of Jersey City, they always say, well, it's obvious that downtown would have been X, Y, and Z, or that Jersey City would have been X, Y, and Z. And I certainly can't take credit over the last 3 years because it's been probably the last 15 years of growth, but the reality is that the city has been here for hundreds of years and nothing has happened. So you can't lose sight of the fact that if you go back 25 years, the downtown area was the poorest area in Jersey City. The people who grew up here will tell you that. Now, the people who haven't been here 25, 30, 35 years would tell you today that you see it as it is today, but it hasn't always been like that. And a lot of the reason that it has been fortunate to expand has been because of some of the zoning and redevelopment things that we have done. So it's not all bad. Let me start on that first and foremost. Secondly, as it relates to development away from the waterfront, which has been a priority for us, it is hard to bridge a gap that has happened for decades. There have been areas of the city that have certainly been neglected. I think everybody can agree to that. That said, for the first time in 30 years, we have development actually coming out of the ground in Journal Square. Journal Square was the heart of the city a long time ago. When you are in the Turnpike now, even if you don't venture to Journal Square, you will see going towards the Holland Tunnel on the left side, buildings being constructed there. That was not easy to achieve, to get people to actually invest hundreds of millions of dollars there. On the west side, just at the last council meeting, 1,600 units, part of the entire remake of NJCU. On the west side there, a new supermarket. On the west side there, we have bids coming in right now in regards to the Honeywell property. On the west side there, we're building a city hall annex to incentivize development on the south side. So you'd be hard-pressed to say that we already have development down here. Now, on the affordable housing front, when we took office, there were a lot of problems with how that process was. Now, I think you all can recognize that once you change the laws and make the process a little bit more transparent, a little bit better, those buildings won't be constructed overnight. It does take time to go through the approvals, to apply for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, and then eventually start construction. Now, with that said, I can tell you what we have done. First, we changed how the Affordable Housing Trust Fund is actually given out. What used to happen prior to us was there was a pot of money. It generally fluctuates around $5 million to $6 million. It is paid for by the pilot abatement program. When somebody pays into that, they pay into the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. What was happening prior to us was that it would go to $1, it would go into a fund, a developer would then apply for those dollars. It was rolling consistently, so you can never compare different projects. They would apply for those Affordable Housing Trust Fund dollars, and of course, the developer would put it in the cheapest part of the city at the time, so predominantly on the south side of the city. And that ultimately exasperated that tale of two cities, as people like to say, because you have an area on the south side of the city that had affordable housing, lower income housing, leveraging the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, and an area downtown where they were building larger buildings. We came in and we changed that process entirely. We changed how you rank in the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. If you are applying to build affordable housing downtown, you get extra points in the point system. And the reason for that is because we want to incentivize developers to have affordable housing in every corner of Jersey City. The goal is ultimately to have market rate housing throughout the city and affordable housing throughout the city, the waterfront included. Now, what has happened since then? You see applications going up ultimately for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. You actually see people applying and able to compare because there are finite deadlines on when somebody can apply by. So they have the opportunity to see every single project side by side, to see actually which ones were the best. That process is working. And as I said initially, we have approved or started construction in the last 2 years equal or more, it's right at that level right now, than the previous 10 years of affordable housing. Leading the state of New Jersey in veteran affordable housing is something very important to me. Now, it's not only in one part of the city for the first time. Out of that 800 units that I touched on, we have started construction on the first 80-20 projects in 20 years. What is an 80-20 project? Is that inclusionary zoning. 20% of those buildings are going to be affordable housing. Where are those buildings located? Hey, the BJ's parking lot, under construction right now. That's going to be 80 units of affordable housing inside of those market rate buildings. Behind Unico, you see on Marion, under construction. They actually broke ground today inside that project. 80 units, affordable housing. So while it's easy, or some can say from outside, and struggle with some of the challenges, I tell you that I am super conscious of the affordable housing and the affordability component. Now, it is a challenge also because it catches both ways. I'll hear all the time throughout the city, people will say, we want investment in our community. We want investment, we want you to incentivize investment. We're doing that, but they'll also say simultaneously that we don't want the context or the texture of our community to change. Those are two things that are very, very, very hard to not have working together. generally when you have money pouring into things, hundreds of millions of dollars into real estate development to incentivize the area, you also see some of the retail change, and some of the byproduct of that is some of the prices escalate on housing costs. That's a chain reaction that happens, and we're mindful of it to make sure that there is an affordable component to everything that we're doing, but we are very, very thoughtful on that. So that's the affordable housing situation. Now, on the redevelopment plan situation, like I said earlier, there's no question that Jersey City leverages redevelopment plans probably more than most anywhere in the state of New Jersey. And they're a mixed bag, ultimately, because on one hand, they give the city a lot more flexibility. On the other hand, they give the city a lot more flexibility, and it ultimately comes back to trust of government. Now, that is a hard thing to come by today in government and politics. I'm the first one to recognize that. And we're not always perfect at it, but it does give us flexibility, which ultimately is important. So one of the controversial ones was the plot next to City Hall, ultimately. There's a parking lot there, which is a City Hall parking lot, and we ultimately want that to be redeveloped. One can argue that we should just put it out to bid, and then ultimately it gets constructed however it gets constructed. The last time that we did that on a major piece of property was what was formerly the Jersey City Employment and Training Building, which is adjacent to the Grove Street path system. It's right next to where Two Boots is today. The word bookstore is in it right now, so you guys get it. That used to be a city-owned building. We put it out to bid. The top bidder at the time, I believe, was in the range of $5 million. Don't quote me. It was not a lot of money. And we had to give it to the best bidder. It took a long time to renovate that because I would argue we didn't give it to the best developer who has capability of doing that. We gave it to the best bidder. Now, when you look at the property next to City Hall, that parking lot, going back to that one ultimately that I touched on, if you put it out to bid, you try and get the highest bidder ultimately. That's obviously what's in our best interest. But in that immediate area, there are other things that Jersey City is trying to do without burdening the taxpayer. Most notably is park and green the surrounding areas of City Hall, so that the adjacent area behind City Hall becomes a park, the front becomes green, and the City Hall gets refaced because it's dated, ultimately. Now, there's two ways that that can be paid for. That can be paid for us collectively in the room here, which I assure you is a very expensive thing. Or we could figure out how to leverage the private sector to do that. And redevelopment plans give us the best opportunity to do that. So that's the reason why we take the approach that we do. Is it better to have a larger master plan that is more rigid? Yes and no. It is good to have one. It gives more clarity to residents, certainly, but it is also more rigid, and cities are fluid. They're constantly changing. Nothing in the city is rigid. Nothing. And to say that this is the redevelopment plan that pertains to everything wouldn't be smart on our part. So I understand the frustration, but I hope that you understand that it is thoughtful from our side on how we approach it. So that's kind of the big picture, long answer, and I guess I'm going to have more to drill down on that if you guys have more specific questions on it.